On the left-hand side, it is Aiden Brier, the last unblemished player in this tournament, playing 4-color control, and of course taking on that old legacy standby, that deck we see all the time, Louyis Fata playing humans. Humans, Craig.
Yeah, so this is the... I think this is a nod to how things have slowed down a good bit, and we don't have those turn one combos going on anymore. If we did, I don't think humans could really exist. But in a metagame that shifts towards turns 2, 3, 4, or 3, 4, 5 being the most important turns of the game, humans can have enough to interact with those decks.
Okay, I've already got some beef with this deck classification because I saw that hand and there were 2 creatures in it, one of which was a Stoneforge Mystic, one was a Phyrexian Revoker. Neither of those creatures are humans.
Do you want me to get Nick Miller? We'll have a little conversation with him about this.
This might be on my trouble list. I demand a higher percentage of humans in my humans decks. I'm looking at this. This deck is not humans. It is mislabeled. This is Death and Taxes. This is Death and Taxes. Classic Death and Taxes, Phyrexian Revokers, Flicker Wisp,
okay.
Mirror Crusader. Our apologies. We have the name of the deck wrong.
We do have a humans deck in the field.
Correct.
Running around with the typical kind of modern human strategy with wastelands and things like that to update it.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is Death and Taxes. And this is a deck which has been hard punished by the addition of Wrenn and 6.
Oh.
And maybe it got this label of humans because we just weren't expecting Death and Taxes.
Sure.
Wrenn and 6, an absolutely brutal card against the Death and Taxes deck. Killing Flicker Wisp, killing Mother of Runes. Really, really problematic card. Killing Thalia. But here you see Louyis Fata, 9-1-1 presently with Death and Taxes. Players certainly aren't packing targeted hate at this point. Here's a Fatal Push for 2 mana from Brier. That's going to take care of that Thalia. These matchups are interesting. I really like Death and Taxes versus 4-color control.
It is super interesting. It's often a battle over the lands as the resource that you fight over. We saw Aiden take that Ether Vial on the first turn with the Thoughtseize so that he was able to keep up. If the opponent wants to cast threats, he can't be porting and wastelanding you. And I think that's just really important.
Well, here is Stoneforge Mystic, newly freed Stoneforge Mystic, now available to modern players as well. But a classic legacy stalwart, especially in this Death and Taxes deck. Gonna go find some equipment. What's gonna be the sword of choice? 1 Batterskull, 1 Sword of Fire and Ice, 1 Umezawa's Jite in this Death and Taxes deck. Aiden just going to do a little fetching here.
Uh-oh. Careful with the non-basics.
Yeah, scary proposition against Death and Taxes. And that's another point of the squeeze for Death and Taxes. A very wasteland-focused deck, happy to restrict your opponent's mana. More basics than ever these days. Stoneforge Mystic going to bite it to another Fatal Push from Aiden. Here's a Baleful Strix. It's going to draw a card. Just passes the turn. Back to Fata. Only 2 lands for both players thus far.
We had the Wasteland last turn.
All right, there you go. Classic Wasteland shenanigans. Couple of ports. Now here's Phyrexian Revoker. What's going to be the name from Fata?
Man, just Wrenn and 6 against this strategy. So it would kill almost all of these creatures, and it's so good against the port Wasteland strategy.
Fata very aware of that problem, naming Wrenn and 6 with that Phyrexian Revoker. Here's a second copy of Baleful Strix. Still no additional land from Brier.
And I like the no attack from Aiden. He's saying, yeah, it doesn't matter if I get in for 1 here. Like that 1 point of damage is almost meaningless the way that the games play out. He's either going to accumulate this huge advantage and overwhelm his opponent with a Planeswalker, or the opponent's going to attack him to death. So he's going to play as defensively as possible. He's not going to attack there in case there's a Sword Plowshares on the other one and the opponent gets in for free 2 points. I like it.
It's an attempt at Mother of Runes from Fata. Brier, Force of Will at the ready. Problematic card against control strategies. Do not want that one on the battlefield. We're going to start the port game. Here's a port on upkeep, on Underground Sea. Brier able to respond with Brainstorm, though.
Yeah, and he found a fetch land, which is so important when you're facing on the port on your one blue source.
Also going to get the perfect Brainstorm, 2 cards on top, and a shuffle. I guess you got to draw 1, so it's not quite perfect. The near perfect Brainstorm.
Maybe he wants that one.
Could be.
And then it's perfect again.
Could be. Fetching time.
Very patriotic with this. At our last event, you talked about how you wish you could sport the unironic
correct
cowboy hat.
I do not think this is of that variety. I think this is squarely in the ironic cowboy hat.
Okay, so this wouldn't... This doesn't tickle your fancy.
I just don't feel like this is a natural part of Aiden's wardrobe. I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying he doesn't see it as part of his identity and put it on in the morning when he's headed to work or out to do some farming. It doesn't seem like it's that integrated into his lifestyle. When
you say you want to wear the unironic hat,
I have to mean it. I have to mean it.
You have to actually quit your job and go work on a ranch.
Yes, that's probably true.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And what are you going to name your horse?
I'm going to leave that to my wife. My wife, actually formerly a professional equestrian rider, so she is in charge of all horse-related activities on the ranch. I will maintain the raccoon and squirrel portion of our ranch.
The rodent population?
Yeah, we're a bit unconventional in our ranching preferences, but big money in raccoon milk, Craig.
If you can get it.
If you can get it. It's a tough squeeze, but...
Oh, man.
There's another Phyrexian Revoker. I'm going to guess that's probably naming Renin 6 again, but we'll get some confirmation on that.
That's a JT.
Yeah, want to get that one active if you can. Here's a Plague Engineer. And that is going to go ahead and answer that Phyrexian Revoker. We just confirmed it was naming Renin 6, but no longer of this world is that Revoker. And now it's time for the beats. Baleful Strix coming in, 2 points of damage.
Coast is clear.
Yep. Yeah, Death and Taxes really needs to get access to its more grindy elements to be able to compete with 4-color control. There's lots of card advantage buried in this deck, but you have to unlock it a little bit. Ether Vial is a big part of that. We don't see that on the battlefield. For Fata.
I think it's a resource advantage more than card advantage.
That's a good way of putting it.
Where they get some threats on the board, and with Thalia and the ports and the wastelands, they're able to just choke their opponent out while they present more threats than the opponent can answer.
Right. Here's an Ether Vial, and if we can get that one going, that could present some problems for Brier in the long term. I will point out, though, Brier's deck with answers to Artifact in the main, of course. Colligan's Command. Effectively deployed.
And it looks like Aiden has a Renin 6 in his hand. Little awkward with the way his mana base is looking right now.
Yeah, I wish you had one of those Astrolabes. Even the first Astrolabe wouldn't solve the problem. Do have that fetch there. I'm sure there's a Bayou that Brier could go find.
Yep. Badlands, Volcanic Island, any of that variety.
Mm-hmm. But presently, 2 colors of mana away from casting Renin 6. So that Ether Vial starting to tick up now.
Yeah, it's real
Board at the ready.
Awkward. It's staring down that Ether Vial and the Jitte on the board.
Scary.
Yeah, you really don't want the first set of counters to end up on the Jitte.
Yeah, scary spot. Going to go ahead and crack fetch as Brier. Looks like we are going to get Tropical Island. Wasteland on the only white source. Abrupt Decay on Vial. And things starting to look grim for Fata.
Yeah, that's actually a great development for Aiden.
Another Caracas ready to deploy. 2 colorless mana here. Maybe another Evoker? Yes, it is. Again, I'm going to assume Renin 6 until told otherwise. Can confirm. Renin 6 is the name.
You're just on fire.
I know. Max Punish, Jace the Mind Sculptor, comes down.
This is so funny because he really wants to bounce that, but then it's just going to come down next turn, naming Jace. Yeah. It's a pretty funny situation.
Awkward, but long term, you're probably okay with that development. You're not playing for this particular turn. You have very long sights on this game. Second white source for Death and Taxes. Maybe that'll unlock some options. Redeploy that Revoker. We'll confirm the name this time. I'm not going to say Renin 6 blind. I think Jace is very reasonable here.
I think it's necessary.
It is, in fact,
All
naming
right.
Jace the Mind Sculptor. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, is the follow-up. A little awkwardly had to use that Caracas, unable to provide a little extra protection for Thalia here, but I agree. Got to spend mana here. Ponder, step 1 from Aiden.
One more mana source would just open up Aiden's hand. If he was able to deploy the Renin 6, it'll pick off the Revoker. Jace will send back the Thalia, and then the next turn the Renin 6 can pick off the Thalia, and it would just be so good for him. Conversely, if he's not able to make a meaningful play this turn, the Jitty going onto the Thalia, first strike, getting some counters, that would be huge.
Yeah, let's see if
for Louyis' side of the board.
Let's see if Louyis can make that happen. Is going to go ahead and equip. Is Umezawa's GT going to get active? So many games of Magic have been determined by this question. Is this going to work? There's some combat damage. That means counters.
Ooh, this is a problem.
That means these Strix can be cleaned up, and the offense might now be starting.
Well, the Strix gets cleaned up. The Jitty can protect the Thalia from a potential Renin 6. It's just so big. Getting the first counters on there is just so significant.
Mother of Runes, a nice follow-up. How does Aiden respond here?
Yeah, and Louyis hasn't really done a ton of squeezing, so to speak, on his opponent's mana, but we see how if Aiden just misses a few land drops or he doesn't have one of his colors, you know, these creatures aren't particularly big, they aren't particularly powerful, but just the combination of them is disruptive enough that the control deck gets behind very quick.
I've heard Death and Taxes described as mono-white control before.
Sure.
I really love that description.
Yeah.
It is fair. And you see a bunch of small creatures on the battlefield. That's not what you think this deck is about, but it really is. It wants to make things difficult for our opponents, answer everything they can do, and eventually just kill you with some small creatures. Here's a Snapcaster Mage. That's going to get a Fatal Push, targeting Thalia. That will hit the bin. And the turn goes back to Louyis, but once that GT is active,
The Mother Runes is online now. That just the whole combination is such a problem here.
right, more white mana, like that. Gonna go ahead and equip on the Revoker. Kill the 2 creatures. Now it's time to attack.
Yeah, just get that Jace off the board.
I agree. Play it safe. More counters. Lot of 1 toughness creatures in Aiden Brier's deck. 3 mana being spent now. Sanctum Prelate
Let's dial up that one.
on 1. That's it for 1 casting cost spells. This is a neat neat card. And I think this was a big get for Death and Taxes going back a couple years now. This card's been around for a while.
It's super powerful. You don't see more of it because it costs 3 mana.
Right. Very expensive.
Yeah. In a format where people have Daze and Lightning Bolts and you want to Wasteland and port people, 3 mana is a lot.
But I think that was the death knell for Aiden Brier, and that is going to, in fact, get a scoop.
Yeah.
That means Death and Taxes takes down game 1.
I think it could have been almost anything.
Yeah.
Just the combination of the Jitty being online with the Mother Runes to protect things and a couple of ports, just there was no coming back for Aiden there. And it's so funny because if he'd gotten the Ren and 6 on the board earlier, I think it would have just opened up everything for him.
Right.
It would have just been a complete wash the other way.
Well, we've talked a lot about how good this 4-color control deck has its mana, but that's only when it draws Arkham's Astrolabe. In other spots, you're a very awkward 4-color deck, and you really have to cobble things together. I think we saw the 4-color control deck really punished for its greedy mana base, probably for the first time in that particular game. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at our sideboard options and see what Aiden Brier can do to try and rest this match even. We'll start on Aiden's side. It's 3 Pyroblast, 2 Leovold Emissary of Trust, 2 Surgical Extraction, 1 Veil of Summer, 1 Plague Engineer, 1 Force of Negation, 1 Ancient Grudge, a Pithy Needle, a Crop Rotation, a Hydroblast, and a Karakas. I think the big headline for why Death and Taxes has taken a hit is Ren and 6.
Yes.
Plague Engineer deserves some credit as well, though.
Yeah, it is another super important card in the matchup. It doesn't have to pay the tax for things like Thalia, which is super nice. It has Death Touch, so it trades with things bigger than itself. Very powerful card. Definitely bring in the Plague Engineer. I like the Ancient Grudge here. It hits tons of things that you want to take care of. And the Pithing Needle as well. It can shut off the early Ether Vial. It can take care of some equipment if you need it to. And then even the Karakas I can see coming in here. There's enough legendary creatures where just being able to ship Thalia back to their hand to free up your spells is definitely significant.
Any interest in that crop rotation? Think you want to protect a little bit from being ported, from Wasteland?
So it's green, which we see that's often the sticking point for Aiden's mana.
Right.
Which is a big part of it, and it's just a resource that you commit. I think there's a definite cost to be paid when you draw that card, and it's not good. So I'm skeptical of the crop rotation coming in.
Okay. I think I'm with you there. Why don't we go over to the Death and Taxes side, where we see 3 copies of Council's Judgment, 3 Rest in Peace, 2 Path to Exile, 2 Aethersworn Canonist, 2 Cataclysm, 1 Containment Priest, 1 Leonin Relic Warder, and finally 1 Pithy Needle. What do you want to do if you're Death and Taxes?
Man, I just want to resolve a Cataclysm.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Like that's the big one. And, we see how long the game goes and how important it is for Aiden to have lots of lands to work with, and how he gets behind and he's always trying to play catch up. And Cataclysm is one of those cards that just, boom, it slams the door shut. It puts them back on 1 mana and leaves you one of your threats on the board. So that's the card, to me, that's the big one. I don't know about many of these other cards. Aiden, I can see the Pithing Needle coming in, shut down some of the Planeswalkers, but so much of what Aiden is doing is just controlling your side of the board. And so you want to make sure you still have some threats to cast each turn. You don't want to water down your deck too much and slow things down.
Right. There's like some fear of Ren and 6 and Plague Engineer. Those are problematic permanents, and I could see looking towards more answers, but you're right. You have to maintain your threat density. If you go too far down that road, start bringing in things like Council's Judgment to answer Ren and 6, I don't think that's something you can really get away with, because now you're trading at a mana loss, and you're just diluting your deck. And like you said, not many sources of pure card advantage, more interaction advantage that Death and Taxes is looking to leverage.
Yeah, I mean, I could see taking a strategy where you cut the Swords to Plowshares and you bring in the Council's Judgment and you say, there's nothing I need to kill on turns 1 or 2. That's not the time I need to cast this card. So I'll have the more flexible answer in Council's Judgment. It can pick off a Planeswalker, but it'll still get a creature. It'll still get the Plague Engineer off the board if that's what I need to do.
We'll have to see how Louyis approaches that problem. Well, if you love dissecting sideboarding decisions, figuring out these intricacies of so many matchups, I know just the place for you, Craig. Head over to Star City Games Premium. Not only do you get access to exclusive content by our best writers, and also me for some reason, you get the ad-free experience and also a 5% discount on SCG purchases. You want to know more about Star City Games Premium, head over to go.starcitygames.com/premium. My favorite column on the premium side is the what would we play column.
Sure.
Where basically all the writers just pony up their deck list for the weekend. This is what I think is the best possible thing to be doing. Oftentimes there's disagreement, which shows you just how great of a game Magic is. You put some of the best players in the world together, and they all come to different conclusions.
Yes.
But there's always thoughtful analysis, and it tells you where the metagame's headed and what people are thinking about. Even if you don't agree with the specific choices, it's such valuable insight into the mind of a top-level competitor. And me. Never going to include myself in that group. It sounds like both players on a mulligan to 6 presently.
Yeah, you're telling people to sign up for our Star City Premium. Mm-hmm. If you buy singles regularly,
it's a good deal.
What?
Pays for itself.
So I like Star City because they always have everything in stock, and then they'll have them ready for you when you show up at the show.
Right.
Buy them online, tell them to bring them to the show. Show up that morning, boom, grab your cards, they're there. And if you're buying cards regularly, the premium pays for itself through the discount real fast.
Yep. Yeah, if you've never used the in-store pickup option to pick up at one of our opens, very convenient. You don't have to worry about things. Your cards will always be there. Here's a nice start for Death and Taxes. Ether Vial, turn 1. The ideal start, I would say. Aiden on the play of this game. Both players on 6.
Ooh, we got a green source. We've got a red source.
Is it Ren and 6 time? And how would Death and Taxes respond to that? It is Ren and 6. This is my big question mark. Can Death and Taxes navigate this game?
And I love... So the 4-color control deck gets to dip into some of these dual lands that we don't traditionally see.
Yep.
So this turn he's got red-green. Next turn... he probably wants to play a Baleful Strix, and he already has the blue-black to deploy that.
Not a bad setup. There's Caracas.
Ooh, I like this.
Grudge. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think the Ether Vial, being able to play at instant speed, was going to be a big part of Louyis' plan against these Ren and 6, these Baleful Strix. All that matters. Getting around them a little bit at instant speed. Not anymore.
And just a couple of activations from this Ren and 6. You know, even if a Council's Judgment gets it off the board next turn, getting those extra lands is just so big for Aiden. We see that his mana is going to be perfect. He's not going to have to worry about wastelands and ports the same way he had to worry about them in game 1.
Craig, how do you tack this much card advantage on a 2-mana Planeswalker? The fact that this can get you a card every single turn for the rest of the game is preposterous for 2 mana.
Ooh, big Thalia.
Haven't seen this Thalia in a while. It's 3 mana Thalia. That means creatures as well as non-basic lands coming into play tapped for Aiden Brier, and a big body on that Thalia as well. 3/2. Able to survive Ren and 6. Let's see if that's a meaningful card in this matchup. 4 mana available now, and it's Jace the Mind Sculptor, and this game feels over.
Yeah, just wrap it up.
Yeah, this is an incredible amount of on-battlefield advantage for Aiden Brier.
Well, we saw how the equipment was a big part of how Louyis fought back in the previous game. There's an Ancient Grudge just sitting there in the graveyard.
Here's 4 mana. It's Cataclysm time, Craig. How do you feel about that one?
This is an equalizer here, huh?
Mm-hmm. This is a big get. I'm willing to bet there's not a lot of Force of Wills left in Aiden's deck either.
I was going to say, that's one of the ones that commonly gets cited out in this matchup. And I think after you see Cataclysm, you say, maybe I need to bring a couple of these back in.
Mm-hmm. Might have been a minute since you saw Cataclysm. Each player chooses from the permanent he or she controls an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, a land, sacrifices the rest. That means those Planeswalkers headed to the bin right now. Not a card type when Cataclysm was created.
That's what's so funny about this. it only lets you pick those card types, and you sacrifice the rest of your permanents. This card, Exodus, I believe, right? Way back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we were saying Aiden's got this one all wrapped up. That was just this massive equalizer.
Yeah.
All that card advantage he had accumulated, all the extra lands, 2 planeswalkers on the board. Aiden's right back to 0.
Yeah, we're probably back to about card parity, given how much advantage the Wrenn and 6 generated over those 2 turns, but
all of those cards that we were mentioning earlier that weren't significant anymore,
right.
The 1 toughness creatures,
now they matter.
Back online, ports and wastelands, huge again.
Yep, absolutely. And it could be that Brier is now reliant on getting Astrolabe because a lot of the duels that he would otherwise use are in the bin.
Yep.
Not multiple copies of those dual lands. Only 1 Badlands, only 1 Sea.
Astrolabe would be big.
And like you said, Craig, we're going to play the port game now. Start tapping down that tropical island. Probably purposely keeping Aiden off Wrenn and 6 mana. Want to see a threat here from Louyis. There's one. Another 3 mana Thalia coming down. Now we have Force of Will.
A little late.
Yeah.
So awkward.
Would have loved that against Cataclysm. So Brier kept in at least some number of Force of Will, but didn't have it at the crucial moment. Force of Will pitching Baleful Strix.
Oh, man, this is another game where you just would love to have the Astrolabe on the board.
Yeah.
It would have even survived through the Cataclysm.
Absolutely. Here's another 3 mana threat. It's a Mirran Crusader. Protection from black, protection from green, and double strike. Here's another Force of Will. Wow, he must have drawn running Force of Wills after the Cataclysm.
Ooh, Wasteland. Ooh.
The squeeze is coming. Brier struggling to stay alive, but
like we said, yeah, it's not card advantage, but it's resource advantage.
Here's Karakas. Here's a second Mother of Runes, and that means removal is basically a non-option for Aiden Brier at this point. Going to have to find Plague Engineer or something along those lines if you want to shut down the Mother of Runes effectively.
And then he needs to be able to cast it. Thalia, another huge get here.
Brier just can't cast spells anymore.
Yeah, he's done with spells, and he really doesn't want to fetch up another land until he has something to cast.
Yeah, I agree. Going to go ahead and tap down that island.
We called it too early, Brian.
Craig. We're very stupid.
Fair enough. I try not to discredit myself.
You set it up too. You were like Cataclysm, absolute equalizer. They could totally change things. Then we called the game for Aiden.
And then he played a Cataclysm.
And Louyis was like, you guys are idiots. Have you read Cataclysm? Have you read this card? Do you know how powerful it is? Now we do.
And it looks like Aiden drew an Astrolabe. Can't cast it.
Yeah, that second, he's only got 1 other snow-covered island in his deck. It's in the graveyard. The other snow-covered land, snow-covered swamp. Can't get that with Scalding Tarn.
Sure. Well, and the Thalia.
Right.
It's just jamming him
up. You need a second mana source. Well, here's a Bayou. Still no plays to be made for Brier, and that life total rapidly decreasing. 4 more points of damage, and that means Brier needs an answer now. Right now.
And there's even a Karakas in case he needs to protect this Thalia from something. What a bunch of junkers. Every time I play against Death and Taxes, it's the most frustrating experience, right?
Have you ever played with it?
Limitedly, but yes.
And did it do nothing when you played with it?
Not all the time.
Okay.
But it definitely has those hands sometimes where you're like,
Right.
all right, I'm close. Like, I need to keep this hand.
Yeah, and this was a hand that was very, very effective. And Louyis Fata, 10-1-1 with Death and Taxes, hands Aiden Brier his first loss of the entire tournament. We're out here talking about how Plague Engineer, Ren and 6 have shut this deck out of the format. Here's a 4-color control deck packing both those cards in large numbers. And Louyis Fata says, I don't think so. That doesn't matter to me. You ever hear of Cataclysm? Are you familiar with the set Exodus? Honestly, Exodus, the set, might be older than Aiden Brier, the person.
Yeah, oh, probably.
So I think there's a possibility that that might have been his first experience with the Cataclysm. Aiden, we've lived through it for years now. I'm sorry.
I've been on the receiving end of that bad boy.
I'm sorry if that was your first pass.
The weather like crashes into the ground or whatever.
It is truly cataclysmic. We are going to take a brief break after that. We'll get some time-shifted magic for you. We'll be back in just a few. Don't go anywhere.